Welcome and thank you for staying tuned to Plus TV Africa's election countdown program, Nigeria Decides. My name is Felicity Ezewike.
And I am Ekene Ezeji. Nigerians went to the polls today to elect who their state governors and state legislators will be.
The governorship elections were held in 29 states of the Federation, while the elections for the state legislators were held for the 36 states.
Expectedly, there have been interesting developments both in the lead-up to and in the course of the process today.
Major talking points were the pockets of violence preceding the polls in some states, with INEC officers getting burnt in Akwa Ibom and Abia states. For today, the major issue has been the low voter turnout, which not very many political watchers anticipated.
Yes, pockets of results have started trickling in, but we'll await the official announcements by state INEC officers who are saddled with the responsibility of giving the official results.
We'll be talking about all the results as they emerge and analyze the issues evolving from the elections with our studio guests. But first, let's have an update on things from our Abuja Bureau Chief, Amadine Uye. Let's see if we have him on the line. Amadine, good evening.
Good evening, Miriam.
Okay, it's Felicity, Amadine. Thanks for joining us. How has your day been so far in Abuja as part of the elections?
It's been very, very hectic. We visited several areas in Abuja. We visited satellite communities. We visited the city center. And we also time to cross over to Nasarawa State. You know, it shares a very close proximity with the federal capital.
What would you say, Amadine, this is Ekene speaking, what would you say is the common thread you've observed as you've gone across from one polling unit to the next?
First of all, voter apathy was widespread, not only within the federal capital, also in Nasarawa State. Remember that last 2 weeks there were complaints around the Maraba Axis, Karo local government area. We tried to visit several polling units, but observed that yes, it was a densely populated area. Voters still came out, but many of the voters spoke to us that though the process was improved, an improvement of the presidential and national assembly elections, that so many people refused to come out because they were disheartened, discouraged about the process in the previous polls. But by and by, we try to observe the conduct of security personnel. We'll give them a thumbs up because we met several security personnel and several polling units. We also observed that the military did not get to the polling units. They were along the major road corridors. They were trying to ensure that reduced movements. Though there was a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Restriction of movement, the military only allowed people to move from one area of the city center to another area if that is on displaying their voters card, which meant that they were actually going to their polling units. But by and by, voting within FCT, Kuje, Kurudu, Jikwe City Center, and also crossing over to Karo local government of Nasarawa State was very, very peaceful and more organized.
Amadine, the results as at this moment, or should I say the process of voting has been concluded in many polling units. Could you bring us an update as to the percentage of polling units that have concluded the process of voting and counting, if any?
A lot of polling units concluded voting very early because remember that there was a very large turnout for the presidential elections. Like in Karo local government of Nasarawa State, we met people who said that during the presidential elections they voted 10 p.m. As early as 11 a.m. they were through with voting. And it was observed that so many of the INEC staff really came out on time, and most of the card readers, others, they had minimal problem with the card reader. But around between 12-1, so many polling units were already concluding voting, and they were just waiting that they wanted to wait in case more people heard that it was more organized and they wanted to come out to vote.
Bear with me. You mentioned Maraba, and you know, that's stuck in my head because the last time we saw the crowds, that image was quite striking. Can you give us a sense of how reduced the volume of people was this time around?
The the numbers we saw, according to most people that spoke to us, they said that because we tried to get the figures from a lot of the voters, because they were there, we didn't just want to use our own figures. They said that people that came out to vote compared to the presidential election were not up to 20%.
Wow.
Many of them stayed back at home. In fact, what was happening was that a lot of voters, when they finished voting, they would now go home to tell others that there's a better sense of organization before those ones actually were coming. I spoke to several of them, and they said they were going home to inform their friends and family members that they could come out to vote, that the process was working. So, but a lot of them said that when you compare that not up to 20% that come out for the presidential and national assembly elections came out for the state and the houses of assembly elections.
Amadi, let me ask you, aside from the Federal Capital Territory, what other states were you able to monitor the electoral process in?
Nasarawa State shares boundary with the Federal Capital Territory.
Okay, so how was the situation there?
A lot of residents, a lot of workers, white-collar job workers working as civil servants in the Federal Capital Territory. They live in Nasarawa State. If you look at the Maraba axis, a very densely populated satellite community, is actually under Karo local government of Nasarawa State. We went into the Karo local government to observe voting and also speak to people on the voting process.
Okay, and Madine, you mentioned that one of the reasons that they gave, or the reason they gave, was about being disheartened by the whole process of the previous elections, or how things turned out. Did you not hear people saying anything about concern for security, or was it just merely the fact that they felt disheartened?
Now, most of them didn't complain about security. In fact, all of them we spoke to, none of them complained about security, and most of them, they felt that they were disheartened, and also some of them felt that their votes did not count. Remember that over 17,000 votes were cancelled from Karo local government because of different reasons. According to INEC's stipulated guidelines and the Electoral Act, any polling unit that discarded the use of the card reader and went on to do manual accreditation, they would record 0 votes. And then also any polling unit that had more people voting than number of accredited voters, they would cancel those votes. So a lot of them felt that many people gave different reasons. Some of them felt that it was intentional. In fact, one said that they voted, that the process went on smoothly. Yes, that INEC officials came very late during the presidential and national assembly elections. They were there around 11 a.m. and before voting could start, they started around 2 p.m. and before some of them could vote, it was up to 10 p.m. and some of them said that they stayed till the next morning waiting for the votes to be counted, only to hear that INEC had cancelled those votes because of discrepancies, either more overvoting in those areas, and then also discarding of the card readers. So those were the reasons they primarily.
Let me just clarify, Amadine. Let me just clarify. If they're disheartened because they felt their votes didn't count, it's not because the person they hoped would have come out on top didn't come out on top. Just to clarify.
Some also expressed that. Some thought that their votes would not count and that they felt that their candidates deserved to win, but they found out that another candidate won. But those were some of them also gave that reason.
Okay, a quick question before we let you go, Amadine. The security officials that you saw on the streets of Abuja, were they armed? Was the policemen armed? Because there's been concern about armed policemen at polling units.
Now, I think I cited 1 or 2 armed policemen, but they were not directly involved. Most of the polling units we visited, the security personnel were not armed. When we visited the polling unit 015 at Jikwe, another satellite community in Abuja, I think I cited 1 or 2 armed policemen, but there were very many security personnel there. We saw men of the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps. We saw the Nigerian Police Corps, Nigeria Police, and they were not armed. But along the corridors, the military men that were trying to restrict movement and trying to check vehicles to ensure that people are not going with sensitive materials, those ones were heavily armed. But when we got to Nasarawa State, we observed that the policemen we cited in most of the polling units there were not armed. But we saw other paramilitary agencies. I cited personnel from the Nigerian Immigration Service. They were not armed.
All right, Hamadeen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Felicity.
Okay. All right. So we continue with our guests in the studio. It's a pleasure to have Adewale Ademola Justice, who is a public analyst.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
It's my pleasure.
Good to have you.
Yeah.
And also Etigwe Uwa, who is a legal practitioner. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show. So you heard our correspondent, a general feel of what the situation was like in Abuja, and coupled with your experience here in Lagos, how would you rate the process so far?
Well, essentially, like your correspondent from Abuja said, it looked like there was better organization. It looked like the process started much earlier, but the voter turnout was very, 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 very low. Some of the places I visited, the last election, the presidential and National Assembly election, people actually came, and it took a while before people could vote. But for some of the places I went to today, people got in there in 2-3 minutes. They had already finished voting because the numbers were quite...
I mean, that was my experience.
Yes,
I walked straight in and...
Yeah, the numbers were very, very minimal. And there were all kinds of reasons people adduced. I think generally there was a feel that the presidential election was the main thing, it was a big deal.
Concern.
Okay.
And so there was some sense of
Anticlimax.
an anticlimax. For some people, they felt, look, with the things that they saw on television the last time and all that, they were not sure that the votes would count.
But let me ask, because sometimes people point the finger at INEC, almost like a reflex. Could INEC have done anything differently to encourage a better turnout of voters this time around?
I think the only thing they could have done was to do voter education and all that. But I don't
Between
think
last time and now?
But I don't think that would have had any major impact. I think that the reason people didn't come out is more to do with what happened the last time than anything that INEC could have done in between the last elections and this particular one. I think that people just generally felt, one, the big one is gone. Maybe people felt that the big one affected them more than this particular one. And I also think that quite a lot of people, because of the things people saw, the violence, people being taken down by stray bullets and stuff like that, the last time around, some people just felt, look, it's not worth it. Let me just stay.
But let me ask Mr. Adewale, if I may. We're asking if INEC could have done anything differently. The big one is gone. Can that be rejigged in such a way that some people have suggested that the presidential election should come after the governorship election, so that you have that sense of building up to a climax and you keep the tempo going?
Okay. I want to believe if INEC or the political powers, those that hold the process and the big slums, if they believe in what we believe, it will have been better the presidential election comes last.
Yes.
You understand? Because like we are saying now, most of the people that should come to vote, having concluded the presidential election, find no reason whatsoever to waste their time and be part of this. And again, you will see, if you consider Nigeria's governance structure and the feelings of the people, people are more interested in the presidency. The moment Mr. President's EU is over, not many Nigerians even know much about their state governance. What happens in the states? Not many people. Now, and you will see, if during the build up to the elections, how much of campaigns by the state government, the governors to be, and the House of Assembly members did you see? It was much more of the people at the central. So it's been a psyche issue. Nigerians have been worrying and they've been coping with that. So for them to change overnight, though, like you have suggested, if we can switch and make the presidential election come last, then maybe people would have a bit of buying into the process.
I want to talk about security. One of the concerns last time was that the lives were lost. So far today, I don't know, have you heard of any person that lost their life? There's been, little
skirmishes
of violence and disruptions here and there, but no life compared to the previous.
No. There was a report from Ibadan while we were even here. There was a report from Ibadan. 3 persons have gone. Then there was one again from the south.
As a result of this election.
Of course, yes. Of course, yes.
Is that the confirmed information? Because
we got it from here. We were right here on the studio when the information came in. Yep, one from Ibadan, about 3 persons.
Okay, compared to the heightened level of tension at the presidential.
No, you see, there was tension on against the first date scheduled for the presidential election. Immediately the election got postponed, the tension disappeared.
Okay.
You would understand. So even for the re-election on, was it not 23rd there, but you would see there was little or no tension around town. People came out, it was a bit peaceful. And now, like we had today, driving all the way from my place down here, what I saw around town, there was peace. People were a bit appeased with the elections. So there was no such tension, except that, like I said, voters' apathy.
Yes.
It's been part of our culture, it's been part of our blood, it's been part of our sentiments. We do not see ourselves to be part of the process that bring up whoever becomes our leader.
I was going to say, Mr. Uwa, if you had to pick between election violence and voter apathy, would you not rather have the voter apathy? I know we're not really trying to choose one, but... because I'm trying to I'm considering the idea that it was a strategy to diffuse tension. All these delays, all these have somehow worked in favor of diffusing tension.
Yeah, you could say that, but I don't think we want any of the two, because ultimately, like somebody said, you have situations where maybe 20% of the electorate are determining how we'll be governed.
Okay.
The governance affects all of us. So I don't think we should have voter apathy. I also think that we should do things to ensure that there's increased security and that people don't lose their lives. I think we have a major problem. I think the political class has constantly failed Nigerians. I don't see why any Nigerian should lose his life because somebody says he wants to serve the people. If you really want to serve the people, make your manifesto known. If you lose, so be it. If you win, so be it. If your real purpose is to serve the people, there's no reason why we should witness the kind of violence that we witnessed the last time around. And it looks like the last time things got a bit more brazen. People, before you would see people steal ballot boxes and run away with the ballot boxes. But we saw what we saw, where people actually took the election materials and burnt them right in the open glare of everybody.
Yes.
So I think all of that is not
encouraging.
Is not encouraging.
But I wanted to even ask, because a lot of times people say politics is a game of numbers. Yeah. If more people had turned out, how would you reassure those people that their turnout would make any difference, considering the amount of, would you say, alleged rigging we saw take place at the last elections?
Yeah, that's something else that we need to deal with as a country. Because the beauty about democracy is that it has a way of purging the system. So you get a mandate for 4 years or for 5 years or whatever the length of time is. If you don't do well, the people have the opportunity of saying, look, you haven't done well, go. And once you know that the people, their votes will count, you'll be very, very careful what you do during that period when you have their mandate. So it's something we really need to deal with. And I don't think it's rocket science. Given the amount of money which INEC, has spent on these elections, I don't see why we can't get it right. I don't see why you can't have video evidence in all the 100 and something thousand, polling units that we have in the country, so that there won't be a question as to whether this is what happened or that is what happened. I think that
the cameras could be damaged.
Yes. Well, the cameras.
The hooligans could damage the camera.
Yeah, the hooligans can damage the camera. But I heard the other day that it was said that people should not use phones. They shouldn't use. Why would you say that?
No. I think the information was that they
not to take phones to the polling.
To the polling.
Yes, you can go to the polling unit with it, but you cannot go to the cubicle with your phone.
So that's fine. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have
video
evidence.
But there's been, talking about that, there's been some, pictorial and picture and video evidence of some, skirmishes here and there. Nothing seems to have been done from the previous election, and we have that repeated case here. So I wouldn't, many rather wouldn't say that it's actually as a result of no evidence.
No, you only got those ones through social media. I wouldn't say there are people or groups of persons that have gone up for prosecution with those evidences. Do you understand? All you and I get is just through the social media.
That's exactly what I'm saying, that we've seen some of these things, but prosecution is very rare. If they truly want to go through the process of prosecuting, there will be better effort expended at getting the right evidence to pursue cases. I don't know if you have a thought to finish.
Just before we leave that, the point I was making about video evidence is not so much about prosecution. It's more about the veracity of the process.
Transparency?
And not video evidence in the sense of an individual or a private person being able to have his own video recordings. I'm saying as part of the process.
Okay.
INEC can have, they can have video evidence in all these
polling units.
In all these polling units. And you can actually have the process of collating the scores happen electronically. So if you have that video evidence, and then you have one situation room where, let's say, for this local government, assuming you have about 20,000 polling units or whatever it is, somebody is there, and in one big screen, you have very small screens, and he can see what is going on everywhere.
But just to take up what my colleague just said, with all that material, even if they had such a scenario, we're taking it to your profession. What would people like you, lawyers, how do you then step in and make use of that evidence so that people are assured that all this material will not just get swept under the carpet?
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is this. I think we should get to a point where we move away from election petitions.
Okay.
Where we move away from litigating the result of our elections. How many times in an American election have you seen litigation? One of the few ones that I really saw was the one between Al Gore and George Bush.
But unless there's a penalty, then
so the point I'm making is that the process has become so transparent and so improved that if you lose, you've lost fairly. That's where we should get to. And I'm saying if that
But until we get there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If the video evidence is so clear, and everybody from the local government center to wherever, there are people who are seeing everything. Just like we had option A4. When we had option A4, everybody will queue up, you would count. It will be so clear to everybody who has lost and who has won. So you can do that in such a way that everybody seeing the result will be sure that this is the accurate result. And if you know it's the accurate result, you know you're going to waste your time in court. We don't have to spend the amount of money we spend on legal fees. And when you start this process of the petitions, you find that several judges are taken away from the normal adjudicatory thing that they do.
Onto elections.
Yes, to election tribunals, even appellate courts. When those matters get there, you find that the normal matters that people have just suffer. They suffer delays because the election matters take precedence.
It's not that I don't understand what you're saying, but I still feel that we can't let your profession off the hook simply because it's a team effort. So in as much as I understand prevention is better than cure, there's a reason why you have legal processes.
Yeah.
And those processes should be tried and tested.
Yeah.
So I want you to maybe give us some sense of where do you think that situation is at now? The evidence so far.
Yes.
Do you feel your profession have let the system down? Do you feel that they're on top of things? Because I think that's part of the lack of confidence people have in the process.
Well, I don't think so. I would say that, well, you can't say that the profession has acquitted itself 100%.
Okay.
But I don't think that the problem is with the lawyers. I think the problem is first and foremost with the politicians. If the politicians don't rig, and the process is transparent, like I said, you won't have need for litigation. Now, the lawyer who is doing the litigation cannot be at all the polling units. He would have to rely on the evidence that is made available to him.
Okay.
And there are things which happen, so sometimes you get some evidence, you analyze the evidence, and then you say, okay, we think that this happened or that didn't happen. But it's not as good as if that process was totally transparent. One area where I think that the justice system has failed is that sometimes you see a situation where an election is set aside on grounds of some electoral malpractice, rigging, and so on and so forth. And all that happens is that the person who won initially, who was declared the winner initially, loses the seat. There should be more than that. The person should refund every amount of money that person has earned during that period. The person should be prosecuted. Because it's only when you do that there can be some deterrence, and that you can find a way of preventing others from repeating the same kind of thing. So that is the area where I think we have gone wrong.
Okay.
But that's not the problem of the lawyers. It's actually the problem of those who are in charge. Well, lawyers in a way, those who are in charge of prosecution.
All right, let's still on security and prosecuting and all of that. The EFCC. Some persons are wondering why they are so visible in this particular election. In the polling units I went to today, I saw they were actually like Indian numbers walking around the place, and when somebody asked them, they were like, they're doing their jobs.
EFCC.
Okay. EFCC. I'm a bit concerned about that, especially when we also heard that on this day, EFCC caught people with huge amounts of cash. Some of them allegedly for the purpose of buying vote buying. Actual vote buying was recorded in Kwara, and same EFCC. We had cases in Benue, Ogun, and of course here in Lagos. How do we marry the two? Vote buying, is it the responsibility of EFCC to deal with it on election day, or is there something else that can be done? Maybe the security agencies are saddled with security issues.
No, it's just to authenticate the failure of the traditional policing system. Do you understand? Because the EFCC is never an agency brought up to even interface with processes like elections, or to interface with people maybe spending money or just handing out cash. This is just an authentication of the failure of the police system. Because ideally, policemen or uniformed men are all available at every polling unit. And if they were properly trained and they were properly mandated to take care of things like that, the EFCC is not an agent or agency of government that should come to polling. Just like while I was coming to, I was surprised to be stopped by federal road safety officials.
Yes,
do you understand? It gave me a bit of concern that why federal road safety officials stopping you on an election issue. I'm sorry. You have the police, you have the NCDC, you have even soldiers on the road. So the EFCC being drafted or being brought into this is a shamble. I term it an administrative irresponsibility.
No,
they should be doing something else, not this. It's because our police system has failed.
I want to get your reaction on that as a legal person. EFCC on election day, so visible across the country, apprehending people allegedly with huge amounts of cash and those for vote buying.
And also to tag on to that, maybe the concern that because law is about giving people a sense of what they should be doing where, and just a sense of systems and orderliness. Do you feel that there's a confusion? Because he's also mentioning another aspect of confusion, you know, being stopped on the road. Are people not sure what they should be doing where, or is there a clear idea of how we should be conducting ourselves?
Well, the EFCC Act is clear. I think the remit of the EFCC is to deal with issues of economic and financial crimes. So to get so involved in the electoral process, I don't think is the right thing for the EFCC to do.
Who asked them to get involved? You're wondering who gave them that instruction?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. But the truth about it is that crime can be committed at any time, in any situation. So if a financial crime is committed during election period, then the EFCC will have the right to apprehend people who commit those kinds of crimes.
But isn't that troubling in the sense that people are concerned about the appearance of being intimidated at a time when they're trying to exercise their civic responsibility?
I agree with you, and I think he's made the point. This is traditional policing. It's the duty of the police. I don't think EFCC should actually go out and and begin to apprehend people on election day. But in fairness to them, it may well be, because in previous elections there have been talk about people laundering money and so on and so forth and all that, and perhaps maybe if they feel that they have a lead-in that something is going to happen, some economic or financial crime is going to occur, and they will actually want to go there for the purpose of apprehending the people, catching them red-handed. Maybe, but I think ordinarily the EFCC should not be involved in the electoral process. It should be the police and some of those other agencies that have been designated to try and provide security.
I guess we'll have to round off this segment for now. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. We still have so much to talk about. We'll just do it on the other side of the news update.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're still watching Nigeria Decides. We'll be back in a bit.